Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India NewsHour, India's voice to the world. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next hour, Prime Minister Narendra Modi to visit Saudi Arabia next week for talks on trade, energy and defence cooperation. India slams Bangladesh for the killing of a Hindu, raises concern about a pattern of systematic persecution of minorities. President Putin of Russia declares a brief Easter truce in his country's war with Ukraine. And the second round of US-Iran nuclear talks concludes in Italy. Oman to host the next round on 26th April. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit Saudi Arabia on the 22nd and 23rd of April. It will be the third visit of the Prime Minister to the kingdom after his previous visits in 2016 and 2019. The visit follows Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's visit to New Delhi for the G20 summit in September 2023 and co-chairing the maiden meeting of the India-Saudi Arabia Strategic Partnership Council. Prime Minister Modi's visit next week will also provide an opportunity to exchange views on regional and global issues. India and Saudi Arabia share a close and friendly ties with a long history of socio-cultural and trade contacts. Prime Minister Modi's engagements will take place in Jeddah, where he will co-chair the second meeting of the Strategic Partnership Council with the Crown Prince.
The visit will be hosted by Saudi Arabia in the city of Jeddah. The Prime Minister's engagements will include a one-on-one meeting with His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, as well as formal engagements that include a ceremonial welcome and bilateral talks. As I said, the two leaders will co-chair the second meeting of the Strategic Partnership Council. I've spoken about the two key pillars, the political and ministerial, the political and economic pillars, which are led at the ministerial level between the two sides. The visit is also likely to see the conclusion of several MOUs between the two sides.
India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri spoke to reporters in New Delhi about the significance of the visit and the trajectory of bilateral relations.
The visit provides an opportunity to build on the already strong relations with this strategic partner. You're also aware that the Prime Minister and the Crown Prince share a very close personal relationship with a lot of warmth and respect for each other. And the bilateral relationship has gained a lot from strategic guidance at the topmost level. And there has been significant momentum also in this relationship in recent years.
Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk on Saturday said that it was an honor for him to speak with Prime Minister Modi. He plans to visit India later this year. The billionaire's remarks came a day after Prime Minister Modi spoke to him about the potential for collaboration in technology and innovation. The development comes ahead of US Vice President J.D. Vance's four-day trip to India beginning 21st of April. The two sides will exchange views on regional and global developments of mutual interest. In Bangladesh, a nightmare unfolds for the Hindu community. The brutal killing of Hindu leader Bhabesh Chandra Roy is not an isolated act. It's part of a disturbing pattern. India has condemned it, calling out Dhaka's silence. From temple attacks to targeted abductions, what's fueling this hate? DD India's Mehur Mekuri reports.
Hindus of Bangladesh are living a nightmare. The latest blow is the alleged abduction and brutal killing of Bhabesh Chandra Roy, a prominent Hindu leader in Dinajpur district. His only fault was that he belonged to a persecuted faith. Neighbouring India condemned the incident and slammed the Yunus-led interim government in Dhaka over the killing. India's Ministry of External Affairs posted on X, and I quote, "We have noted with distress the abduction and brutal killing of Shri Bhabesh Chandra Roy, a Hindu minority leader in Bangladesh. This killing follows a pattern of systematic persecution of Hindu minorities under the interim government, even as the perpetrators of previous such events roam with impunity. We condemn this incident and once again remind the interim government to live up to its responsibility of protecting all minorities, including Hindus, without inventing excuses or making distinctions." India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar recently told Parliament that 2,400 attacks on minorities were recorded in Bangladesh in 2024 alone. The year 2025 has already seen over 70 such incidents. But what makes India call this systematic persecution? The answer lies in a string of decisions, or the lack thereof, by the interim government under Mohammad Yunus. No crackdown on radical outfits despite repeated threats and attacks. Yunus lifted ban on Islamist group Jamaat-e-Islami in August last year. No arrests have been made in cases of rape, arson, murder and vandalism. Victims have been left without aid or justice. Bangladesh's government has stayed silent on fake blasphemy claims, emboldening mobs. One of the shocking Home Ministry directives released last year stated that Hindu prayers were banned during Azan and Namaz. From temples torched to communities displaced, each incident echoes a chilling message. Minorities are not safe in Bangladesh. Mehur Mekuri for DD India.
Afghanistan on Saturday condemned the unilateral measures taken by Pakistan to forcibly deport tens of thousands of Afghans since the start of this month. Now, Pakistan has launched a strict campaign to evict by the end of the month more than 800,000 of Afghans who have had their residence permits cancelled, including some who were born in Pakistan or lived there for decades. Pakistan's top diplomat Ishaq Dar flew to Kabul for a day-long visit on Saturday, where he held discussions with Afghan Taliban officials, including Hassan Akhund and Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi. He urged the Pakistani government to facilitate the dignified return of Afghan refugees. Afghans in Pakistan have reported weeks of arbitrary arrests, extortions and harassment by authorities. Still to come on DD India NewsHour. US top court temporarily halts deportation of Venezuelan migrants. US Vice President Vance meets with the Vatican's second highest official in Rome. And at least 148 people die after a boat catches fire in the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Bharat welcomes the world to a new era of creativity. Waves World Audiovisual and Entertainment Summit, as Mumbai hosts the global stage for creativity and innovation. Connecting creators through Creatosphere, where emerging voices rise. Wave Accelerator, where ideas meet global investors. Waves Bazaar, a global marketplace for content. Connecting countries through global media dialogue and industry roundtable. Bharat Pavilion, capturing India's rich history of storytelling.
वेव्स के रूप में भारत एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म बनाने जा रहा है जिसमें दुनिया के एंटरटेनमेंट लैंडस्केप पर उसको बदलने की क्षमता होगी।
From culturals to cinema, gaming to animation, fueling the next wave of entertainment. Connecting creators, connecting countries. Waves 2025.
You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Russia's President Vladimir Putin announced a unilateral Easter ceasefire on Saturday. He ordered his military to halt all battlefield action from 1500 GMT on Saturday until the end of Sunday. Putin said that he assumed Ukraine would follow Russia's example. He told his armed forces chief to ready Russian troops to repel any violations of the truce by Kyiv. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky reacted on a ceasefire and said that Russian drones in Ukrainian skies showed Moscow's true attitude to Easter and the lives of people. The short-term ceasefire proposal from Russia comes as President Donald Trump has been pressing both Moscow and Kyiv to agree to a truce but has failed to extract any major concessions from the Kremlin. Russia on Friday abandoned a moratorium on striking Ukrainian energy targets after each side accused the other of breaking a supposed deal without any formal agreement put in place. Tensions are escalating once again in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. On Saturday, Russia retook key villages in the western Kursk region. A Ukrainian drone hit a car in the Kursk region, killing 3 people, including a child. Ukraine's Air Force said that Russia launched 8 missiles and 87 drones in an overnight attack. Meanwhile, US President Trump said that the US will take a pass on brokering further Russia-Ukraine talks if Moscow or Kyiv make it very difficult to reach a peace deal.
Russia once again solidifies its presence in the Ukrainian region. On Saturday, Russian troops recaptured the village of Oleshnya in Russia's western Kursk region, where Kyiv's forces launched a surprise offensive in August. Russian Defense Ministry also took control of the village of Shevchenko in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region. Russian troops are now at the border and are poised to beef up threats to Ukrainian region of Sumy, where they already carried out incursions in recent weeks. Meanwhile, a Ukrainian drone hit on a car in the Kursk region on Saturday killed a woman and injured a man with child. Whereas Ukrainian Air Force said that Russia launched 8 missiles and 87 drones in overnight attack, causing damage in 5 regions across the country. Russia's defense ministry accused Ukraine of attacking Russian energy facilities 10 times over the past 24 hours. The US brokered a 30-day moratorium in March between Ukraine and Russia against strikes on each other's energy infrastructure that ended on Friday. President Trump is now weighing whether to abandon his efforts to achieve a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine.
If for some reason one of the two parties makes it very difficult, we're just going to say you're foolish, you're fools, you're horrible people, and we're going to just take a pass. But hopefully we won't have to do that. No, Marco is right in saying it. We want to see it end.
Besides, Russia and Ukraine agreed to exchange 246 prisoners each on Saturday in a deal brokered by UAE. The swap will add to a growing list of exchanges since 2022 and brings the total number of captives swapped to 3,233. Bureau Report, DD India.
US Vice President J.D. Vance met with top Vatican officials on Saturday, including the Holy See's Secretary of State. The Vatican described the discussions as cordial, noting that both sides exchanged views on global affairs, particularly countries facing war, political tensions, and humanitarian crises. Special focus was placed on the plight of migrants, refugees, and prisoners, a notable point given past clashes between Vance and Pope Francis over US immigration policy. The Pope, Parolin, and other Vatican officials have criticized several Trump government policies, including Trump's plans to deport millions of migrants from the US and his widespread cuts to foreign aid and domestic welfare programs. Pope Francis, who is limiting his public appearances on doctors' orders as he recovers from double pneumonia, did not take part in the meeting. Vance is visiting Italy over the Easter weekend. The U.S. top court has temporarily blocked the Trump government's deportation of Venezuelan men, citing concerns over lack of judicial review. The lawyers for the American Civil Liberties Union argue that the government is using a 1798 wartime law to deport individuals without a fair chance to challenge it. This has raised questions about defying court orders and the risk of a constitutional crisis.
The Trump administration's efforts to crack down on unauthorized immigrants were paused on Saturday when the Supreme Court ordered a temporary halt to the deportation of Venezuelan men in immigration custody. The decision followed claims from their lawyers that the men faced imminent removal without the judicial review. Lawyers for the American Civil Liberties Union had filed urgent requests in multiple courts, including the Supreme Court, after reports emerged that some of the men had already been loaded onto buses for deportation. The ACLU argued the administration was using a 1798 law typically reserved for wartime to remove them without a fair opportunity to challenge their deportation as mandated by the court. The Alien Enemies Act authorizes the president to detain, relocate, or deport non-citizens from a country deemed hostile to the US during wartime. Trump invoked the 1798 law in an attempt to swiftly deport accused members of the Tren de Aragua, a violent gang originating from Venezuelan prisons that his administration classifies as a terrorist group. On March 15, the Trump administration deported more than 130 alleged gang members to El Salvador. However, many of the migrants' lawyers and families insist they were not gang members and were given no chance to contest the government's claims. The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the Supreme Court's decision. However, on Thursday, President Trump questioned whether judges have the authority to block his deportation efforts after a Washington-based judge ruled that officials could face criminal contempt for ignoring an earlier court order to return deported Venezuelans.
Well, I'm not involved in it. I'm going to respond by saying you'll have to speak to the lawyers, the DOJ. I've heard many things about him, and we'll have to find out what the truth is. But I will say this, we were inundated by millions of people, many millions of people during the Biden administration. They say 21 million. And a big percentage of those are criminals, serious criminals.
The case now risks triggering a serious clash between the executive and judicial branches, potentially escalating into a full-blown constitutional crisis. Bureau Report, TD India.
The U.S. military will consolidate its presence in Syria over the coming weeks and months in a move that could reduce the number of troops it has in the country by half. The U.S. military has about 2,000 troops in Syria across a number of bases, mostly in the country's northeast. The troops are working with the local forces to prevent a resurgence of the Islamic State terror group, which in 2014 seized large swathes of Iraq and Syria but was later pushed back. A U.S. Defense Ministry spokesperson said the troops would be consolidated at unspecified sites in a deliberate and conditions-based process. For now, the U.S. Central Command will remain poised to continue strikes against what is left of the Islamic State in Syria and work with coalition partners to keep pressure on the terror group and respond to any other terrorist threats. Hamas's armed wing released a video on Saturday showing an Israeli hostage alive in Gaza speaking on a telephone in Hebrew. Israeli media identified him as Elkanah Bohbot, who was abducted from the site of a music festival in southern Israel during Hamas's 7th October 2023 attacks that triggered the conflict in Gaza. The Ezzeddin al-Qassam brigades released the more than 4-minute clip. In the footage, Bohbot is seen speaking into a landline telephone, urging a friend to take his wife to the White House to meet U.S. President Donald Trump in an effort to secure his release. It's the third such video of Bohbot in recent weeks, with a previous clip released in late March. In that video, he had urged the Israeli government to secure his freedom. Israeli airstrikes struck approximately 40 Hamas targets across the Gaza Strip in the past 24 hours, following Hamas's rejection of a ceasefire proposal that it said failed to meet its demand for a complete end to the conflict. Israeli forces have now seized about a third of Gaza, advancing from both the north and the south. Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz reiterated that disarming Hamas and freeing hostages remain key objectives. Hamas chief Khalil al-Hayya rejected Israel's offer, calling its conditions impossible, though he offered to exchange all 59 remaining hostages for Palestinian prisoners and a full cessation of conflict. Egyptian-mediated ceasefire efforts continue meanwhile, but with little progress so far. At least 148 people died and dozens more went missing after a boat carrying fuel caught fire and capsized in the northwest of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Hundreds of passengers were crowded into a wooden boat on the Congo River near a provincial capital on Tuesday when an explosion caused by a cooking fire ignited a larger blaze. The disaster occurred at the confluence of the Ruki and the vast Congo River, the world's deepest. A vast Central African nation that covers 2.3 million square kilometers, the DRC suffers from a lack of practicable roads and planes serve only a limited number of cities and towns. As a result, people often travel on lakes, the Congo River, the second longest in Africa after the Nile, and its winding tributaries where shipwrecks are frequent and the death tolls often are heavy. Tanzania's main opposition party said on Saturday its leader Tundu Lissu, who has been held and charged with treason, had been moved to a different prison a day after the party said his whereabouts were unknown. The charges against Lissu have brought new scrutiny to President Samia Suluhu Hassan's human rights record as she bids for re-election in late October. Hassan has frequently said her government is committed to upholding human rights and good governance. A spokesperson for Lissu's Chadema said the party's leaders had met Tanzania prison service officials and been informed that he had been moved. Gerson Sigwa, the government spokesperson, said once a person is charged, any comments related to their cases was the responsibility of the authorities in charge of the case. And now take a look at what else is making news around the world. Thousands of runners were joined by 21 humanoid robots at the Yuzhuang Half Marathon in Beijing on Saturday. This was the first time these machines raced alongside humans over a 21-kilometer course. The robots were accompanied by human trainers, some of whom had to physically support the machines during the race. People demonstrated on the streets of Mozambique over the assassination and kidnapping of an opposition member. Joel Amaral, a close ally of chief opposition leader Venancio Mondlane, was shot on 13th April. Human Rights Watch called on the authorities to investigate the killing. Children marked Easter by burning Judas in rural tradition in the North Bohemia of Czech Republic. The old tradition known as Marching Judas survived only in a few villages in the east of the Czech Republic. During the procession, children walked through the village from door to door, singing songs and being rewarded by townspeople with sweets, eggs and money. The traditional Holy Week procession is in full swing in central Mexico, with over 1,000 sayones gracing the streets of Tetela del Volcan. Sayones, whose origins date back 300 years, are pivotal characters in the Holy Week celebrations. Their costumes, rich in symbolism and craftsmanship, are a visual spectacle. And still to come on DD India NewsHour. An expert take on the second round of US-Iran nuclear talks in Italy. The India-ASEAN Tourism Pavilion is inaugurated at Malaysia Fair. And India observes the World Liver Day with a special event.
Nature gives and we take, and sometimes a little too much. But what happens when this balance tips, and who is the most impacted? Let's take a look at some of the solutions that are trying to help these communities.
We want to encourage people to consume more local products. These were caught in environmentally friendly nets, not farmed. That makes a huge difference.
Project Tangaroa. It's working to build a global framework that can help identify which wrecks need to be taken care of first and find the funding for cleanup missions.
We use SLR organic fertilizer for our plants. With organic fertilizer, the yield is better and the soil's health improves.
You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. A quick recap of the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to visit Saudi Arabia next week for talks on trade, energy and defense cooperation. India slams Bangladesh for the killing of a Hindu, raises concern about a pattern of systematic persecution of minorities. President Putin of Russia declares a brief Easter truce in his country's war with Ukraine. And the second round of US-Iran nuclear talks concludes in Italy, Oman to host the next round on 26th April. The United States and Iran on Saturday concluded a second round of high-stakes talks on Tehran's nuclear program, agreeing to meet again in a week's time. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi led the Iranian delegation, while Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff represented the U.S. The Oman-mediated talks in Rome lasted 4 hours, according to Iranian state TV, which described the atmosphere as constructive. Tehran and Washington, D.C. have had no diplomatic relations since shortly after the Iranian 79 Islamic Revolution. A new round of talks is scheduled for the 26th of April in Oman.
In a tense diplomatic setting, Iran and the United States held second round of nuclear talks at the Oman embassy in Rome on Saturday, an effort to revive dialogue and avoid further escalation over Tehran's atomic activities. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and the US Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff once again held indirect talks with an Omani official ferrying messages between the two sides, a format agreed upon after a similarly mediated first round in Muscat. On the eve of the second rounds of talks, Araghchi expressed cautious optimism, saying a deal is possible if the United States approaches negotiations with realism and restraint.
We are only engaged in indirect talks with the US side, and the reason for this is clear. Because of the threats by the US administration, because of the economic pressure by the US administration, and because of the maximum pressure regime that has been imposed on us, we cannot enter into direct negotiations with them. We have seen a certain level of seriousness in the first round of talks, and if they are ready to discuss the nuclear issue without involving other matters, then we can progress further towards a constructive dialogue.
Years of sanctions, economic mismanagement and isolation have devastated Iran's economy. The brunt is being borne by the middle class and women in particular, amplifying domestic pressure on Tehran to find some relief.
Well, I think the first round of talks was fairly predictable in advance of the meetings, in the sense that both parties were going to essentially break the ice and get together, and it appears that that went off, quite smoothly and without any real problems. But this second round is a lot more complex, especially because of some of the utterances that were made by the various parties in the days that pursued the first meeting.
Donald Trump, who ditched a 2015 nuclear pact with Iran, has doubled down on his maximum pressure policy since assuming office for the second time in 2025, reinstating sanctions and demanding Iran halt its uranium enrichment.
I'm for stopping Iran, very simply, from having a nuclear weapon. They can't have a nuclear weapon. I want Iran to be great and prosperous and terrific. I stopped them once they were broke and they didn't have any money for Hamas. They didn't have any money for Hezbollah. There wouldn't have been an October 7th disaster. They were broke. They had no money, and they weren't spending it to terrorist organizations because they had none.
Washington accuses Tehran of inching closer to nuclear weapons capability, an allegation echoed by the UN nuclear chief, who warned this week that Iran is not far from possessing the bomb. On the other hand, Tehran insists its nuclear efforts are peaceful and remain open to curbs if sanctions are lifted and future agreements come with solid guarantees. With trust eroded and timelines tightening, the road to compromise is narrow. But for both nations, the cost of collapse may be far greater than the concessions required for peace. Bureau Report, DD India.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said the negotiations with the US delegation in Rome were constructive and forward-looking. He hoped Tehran will be in a better position to judge the possibility of reaching an agreement.
As I said, the negotiations were held in a constructive atmosphere, and I can say that they are moving forward, and we are moving forward. There is no reason for too much optimism. We cannot say that we are really optimistic. We must be very cautious, but there is no reason for much pessimism either. We must walk a middle path, reasonable and calm.
And joining us is Mr. R. Swaminathan. Mr. Swaminathan is a former Indian ambassador to Egypt and Austria and former governor for India at the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna. Ambassador, welcome to DD India NewsHour. To begin with, Ambassador, what can you tell us about the just concluded talks in Italy? How was this round of talks different from the previous one?
Thank you, Mr. Ramchandran.
Welcome.
The first round of talks, as you know, like this time as well, it was characterized as constructive by both the parties.
Right.
One difference I would say is that now they are also going to have technical discussions in Oman in terms of, like various possibilities or technical options. So which again is slightly different. And the fact, of course, nobody really expected a breakthrough at this point of time. And the fact that the talks are going to continue, and again, I would say with speed, as you know that it happened last Saturday, it has happened today on the 19th. The next round of talks is going to take place on the 26th. So there is a certain sense of urgency also to be able to wrap up the discussions fast. So I would say that it is a positive development, and as we all know, dialogue and diplomacy is the best way of proceeding, and that's what's happening now, which is very, very positive.
Indeed, as you say, Ambassador, these are very early days. Only 2 rounds of talks have taken place so far. A third round is planned for the 26th of April in Oman. But having said that, if we take a step back and look at the big picture obtaining before us, would a deal avert a war? And conversely, would a breakdown in negotiations start a war?
If you remember, Trump 1.0 in 2015 was this joint comprehensive plan of action,
right,
which Trump administration 1.0 left. The reason was, I think, there was a feeling at that point of time by that administration that it was not preventing a nuclear Iran, but it was only delaying it. And then there was also other aspects like, like it was not stopping the ballistic missile program of Iran. So now with Trump 2.0, there will definitely be an expectation to have JPCOA plus, I would say. What is that plus is something that one has to see.
Now, according to some media reports, Ambassador Swaminathan, Iran wants guarantees that Trump will not quit a new nuclear pact. Is that practical or feasible, you think? And can any agreement ever remain in perpetuity?
It is possible in terms of, I think that is a kind of a concrete commitment. I would say even the US administration may want in terms of, what Iran commits under that, they should continue. So therefore, I think it's possible that, Iran naturally wouldn't want to again get into a situation where what had happened in the previous understanding that they had, that the Trump administration left in 2018. So that is something they wouldn't want. But having said that, you see, this time, I think there is a sense of urgency also, as you may know, that on 18th October of this year, the snapback mechanism will kick in. What is meant by that is that if you remember, there were a number of UN Security Council resolution which imposed various sanctions on Iran. That was between 2006 and 2010. And if any of the parties to the JCPOA were to go to the UN Security Council and say that there is non-compliance, then all the Security Council resolutions which impose sanctions on Iran, those 6 resolutions will come into force. So there is a sense of urgency. So there is an interest on the part of Iran also to be able to wrap up. And so there is some kind of a meeting of mind between the two parties. So I hope that this round of discussions would lead to a positive conclusion.
Another, topic that's coming up every now and then, Ambassador, we keep hearing about a so-called Libya model for Iran. Now, we know that Libya voluntarily gave up its nuclear weapons program in 2003. Would Iran, you think, go the Libya way, or will it go the North Korea way, assuming, of course, that Iran wants a nuclear weapon in that case?
Libya model, as you know, it was dismantling the entire program, which is something which will be, in my view, is not possible as far as Iran is concerned. Rather, Iran will not agree for that. As you know, the whole thing started. Iran incidentally is signatory to NPT from 1970. And they always been saying that, as per Article 4 of the NPT, that they have a right for peaceful uses of nuclear energy. But at the same time, they do have an obligation in Article 2 in terms of not acquiring nuclear weapons. So that is what they have been saying. And therefore, I would say that it will be very difficult for Iran to, rather I would say, almost impossible, I would say, to agree for. But at the same time, I'm sure that the way that probably the President Trump 2.0 will approach the issue will be is they would want something, as I mentioned earlier, JCPOA plus, meaning that some kind of, again, assurance in terms of the ballistic missiles and maybe something in terms of the regional stability and the regional issues. But otherwise, to dismantle Iran's nuclear program, that the way that happened with Libya, while it can be a maximalist position in terms of negotiations, and that is not going to be the final outcome, that will be my assessment of the situation.
Ambassador, if as you say, Iran will not dismantle its weapons program, its strategic program, at the same time, does Iran want a nuclear weapon? Is that the general assessment?
If you see, even under the previous JCPOA, Iran's enrichment was restricted to 3.67%.
Right.
As you know, there are 3 categories of uranium: the low-enriched uranium, the high-enriched uranium, the weapon-grade uranium. The weapon-grade uranium is something which is in the range of 93%.
Right.
And if you see, if any country has a capability of enrichment, it would mean that, theoretically speaking, you can reach there. But then it's a question of what you do and what kind of inspections that you have and how others are given confidence that you are going down that path. So if you again see the Iran's stated policy, I would say a fatwa which was done by the first Ayatollah Khomeini, is that having a nuclear weapon is haram, prohibited, and Iran will never go down that way. So that is a broader kind of a context that they have. So I would say that Iran would, I would expect them to emphasize their right to have peaceful applications of nuclear energy, but then to say that it is only with the idea of having a nuclear weapon, perhaps they themselves are probably not thinking it, though, as I mentioned earlier, that any enrichment capability any country has is a possibility, a theoretical possibility, that you can go for a nuclear weapon in terms of further enrichment of the uranium.
Indeed. And finally, Ambassador Swaminathan, looking at this issue from an Indian perspective, what are India's stakes in this entire Iranian nuclear crisis?
We have civilization relations with Iran, and then Iran is also located in a geopolitical context where it is very important for India not to have any kind of war or any kind of problems in the region, because we have so many people in Gulf. It's an area from where we get our oil and everything. So it's extremely important. As you know, our approach has always been that, in fact, even in this particular US-Iran nuclear talks, which is ongoing now, we consider it as a positive development. Okay. We always believe that dialogue and diplomacy will lead to the thing. And again, you see, if you really see, President Trump himself made a mention yesterday, a statement, where he said that he would like to see a diplomatic solution and not rush into military action.
Right.
And then he also said that he said that Iran has a potential to become a prosperous nation. Another aspect I would say is that, like similar to what happened in the JCPOA last time, you also have an Iran president who is considered quoted moderate. And again, the foreign minister, Mr. Abbas Araghchi, he was the main nuclear negotiator when JCPOA happened in 2015.
Right.
So again, he's the one who is negotiating. So I'm sure that we are probably in good hands to be able to get a good solution at the end of the day, which will be good for India.
Ambassador Swaminathan, thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts and insights with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Right, moving on, India's Minister of State for External Affairs, Pabitra Margarita, who is on an official visit to Malaysia, attended the opening ceremony of the Mata Fair along with the Chief Minister of Kedah, Dato Seri Muhammad Sanusi Muhammad Noor. Minister Margarita also inaugurated the India-ASEAN Tourism Pavilion at the Mata Fair to mark the ASEAN-India Year of Tourism 2025, highlighting Northeast India's rich and diverse travel offerings. Minister Margarita met with delegates from India and ASEAN countries who are participating in the fair at the Kuala Lumpur venue as part of the ASEAN-India Tourism Professionals Exchange Program. World Liver Day is being observed today to highlight the importance of liver care and early detection of liver disorders. The Institute of Liver and Biliary Sciences in New Delhi organized a special event themed Healthy Liver, Healthy India. Home Minister Amit Shah graced the event as its chief guest.
मोदी जी ने देश के सामने लक्ष्य रखा है 2047 में विकसित भारत की रचना करना, जो हर क्षेत्र में आत्मनिर्भर हो और हर क्षेत्र में विश्व का नेतृत्व करता हो। मगर विकसित भारत की संकल्पना बीमारों की फौज के साथ नहीं हो सकती। इसके लिए बहुत जरूरी है कि हर नागरिक को स्वस्थ रहना चाहिए। सरकार ने होलिस्टिक व्यू के साथ इस पर बहुत काम किया है।
In India's eastern state of West Bengal, Governor C.V. Anand Bose visited the violence-affected areas in Murshidabad on Saturday to assess the situation and engage with those impacted by it. Assuring proactive action, the governor said that he had a detailed discussion with the victims in the camp where they are currently staying. He assured them that appropriate action will be taken against those responsible.
Certainly, some other demands or whatever suggestions given by them, all this will be considered. I will take it up with the government of India and the state government for appropriate action. I will follow it up. All their complaints I will listen to. I will analyze it. We have all our sympathetic understanding of what they want. We will do all our best to see that they get justice.
Governor Bose reviewed the situation and met the victims in the affected region on Friday. Celebrating the powerful art of cosplay, the WAVE Summit will see passionate creators, artists and fans from across the country in Cosplay Championship 2025. While the shortlisted finalists have been announced, a wildcard showdown was held for the cosplayers in the city of Mumbai.
Cosplay Championship 2025 is seen as one of India's most prestigious and inclusive cosplay competitions, set against the vibrant backdrop of the Creators Fair at the Waves Summit. Mumbai witnessed the creativity and passion of cosplayers as they competed for the wildcard showdown for Waves.
EpicoCon is trying to bring out the talent for cosplayers to promote the culture and heritage of India, wherein all the games that are created by multiple studios and artists come to life. The cosplay competition that would be at the Waves Summit would basically be an immersive experience of characters representing the Indian culture and heritage.
Today we have witnessed the Waves cosplay wildcard showdown, which was a success, and hopefully in future it will create opportunity for cosplayers in India in terms of career as well.
We felt like the final happening here in the Mumbai again with the showdown like on wildcard entries. So it was great opportunity for all the new field. Actually, the people who are not considering cosplay as the new career path for them, especially in the sector of art. As like gaming has showed up its waves in India in the COVID situation. Right now, I think this is the time for the cosplayers also to come up and show their talent to the world from India.
From a pool of over 50 wildcard participants, 30 cosplayers were selected for their exceptional creativity and performance. The wildcard showdown provided a platform for these passionate artists to showcase their skills, pushing the boundaries of cosplay and earning their chance to compete at the national level.
Cosplaying in India, I feel that it is very underrated at this moment, especially when cosplaying is a growing kind of industry right now. I feel that people should focus more on Indian mythology.
The Waves Cosplay Championship is presented by Creators Street, Media and Entertainment Association of India and Indian Comics Association. This championship is designed to bridge the gap between traditional Indian storytelling and global pop culture, giving Indian creators the spotlight they deserve.
The Mumbai event of the Cosplay Wildcard Showdown showcased India's emerging creators poised to dominate the global stage with their impressive voices and also the creativity. With camera person Kapil Maske, this is Shama Mishra for DD India, Mumbai.
India's Information and Broadcasting Minister Ashwini Vaishnav held consultations with news media organizations ahead of the maiden Waves 2025. The interaction was attended by about 20 media houses from the national as well as regional news media. During the meeting, Ashwini Vaishnav said that the world of creators and their economy is going through a fundamental change. He said that Waves is emerging as a global connector between creators, buyers and markets for scalable creative solutions. The finalists of the Animation Filmmakers Competition being held as part of the Create in India Challenge Season 1 of Waves 2025 has been announced. The best 42 projects focusing on original storytelling across the entire spectrum of animation, encompassing traditional animation, VFX and virtual production, have made it to the final round. Participants will now have the opportunity to pitch their original projects during the Wave Summit, which will be held in Mumbai next month. On 19th April 1975, India launched its first satellite, the Aryabhata, from Russia. Built indigenously, it marked India's bold entry into the space age. DD India's Tapas Bhattacharya has more.
April 19th, 1975. India looked to the skies and took flight. From the launch site in Russia, a satellite born of Indian minds pierced the stratosphere. Aryabhata, India's first satellite, designed and built on Indian soil, launched by a Soviet rocket, but fueled by Indian dreams. It wasn't just metal and circuits, it was a symbol of ambitions, of resilience, of the audacity to dream boldly and fearlessly. Weighing just 360 kilograms, a 26-sided polygon barely 1.4 meters wide, yet it carried the weight of 1 billion hopes. With that single launch, India became the 11th nation and only the second developing country to place a satellite in orbit. Aryabhata didn't just orbit the Earth, it ignited a revolution, one that would blaze a trail to the moon, to Mars and beyond. It all began with a single satellite and an unshakable dream. Tapas Bhattacharya's report, DD India.
All right, now take a look at what else is making news in India. In Delhi's Mustafabad, the National Disaster Response Force has deployed a dog squad to aid in search and rescue operations in the area where a building collapse claimed the lives of at least 11 people. Prime Minister Modi condoled the loss of lives in the building collapse in northeast Delhi. He announced an ex gratia of ₹2 lakh from the PMNRF for the next of kin of each deceased and rupees 50,000 to the injured. The government of the Indian state of Gujarat has announced a reduction in the motor vehicle tax rate on electric vehicles from the existing 6% to just 1%, offering a 5% rebate. The decision aims to boost electric vehicle adoption, protect the environment and promote tourism. Indian naval ships, the INS Chennai and the INS Kesari, successfully conducted maneuvering exercises and visit, board, search and seizure drills. The Marcos team, along with Kenyan Special Forces on board the INS Chennai, engaged in joint training exercises, allowing both teams to refine their drills and enhance operational effectiveness. In sports news, India's Anahat Singh and Veer Chotrani have reached their respective finals at the World Squash Championships Asian Qualifier in Kuala Lumpur on Saturday. Anahat continued her excellent run at the tournament and registered yet another 11-2, 11-7, 11-6 straight games win over Helen Tang of Hong Kong. Anahat will now take on another Hong Kong player, Toby T, in the final. Meanwhile, Veer Chotrani has also advanced to the final of the men's singles category. Veer secured a 11-7, 11-6, 7-11, 11-4 win against Hong Kong's Chi Him Wong. The winners of the tournament will secure direct entry into the World Championships scheduled from 9th to 17th May in the US city of Chicago. India ended its campaign at the Asian Under-18 Athletics Championships in Saudi Arabia's Dammam with 11 medals. Himanshu Jakhar scripted history by winning India's first ever gold medal in the javelin category. The youngster's opening throw of 67.57 meters was enough to land the gold. In boys high jump, Devak Bhushan clinched silver with a 2.03 meter leap, just 0.2 meters short of gold medalist Mohammad Al-Duwaij of Kuwait. Earlier, Aarti doubled her medal tally at the competition after winning a bronze medal in the women's 200-meter race. She had previously won bronze in the women's 100-meter race. Indian athletes won medals, 1 gold, 5 silver and 5 bronzes at the competition. Carlos Alcaraz battled into the semi-final of the Barcelona Open with a 7-5, 6-3 win over Alex de Minaur. Top seed Alcaraz's service was broken twice but recovered to win the opening set. Alcaraz, chasing a third Barcelona title in 4 years after missing the last edition with injury, secured a 4-2 lead in the second set before closing out the victory. The Spaniard sets up a semi-final clash with France's Arthur Field, who went through after his Greek opponent, Stefanos Tsitsipas, was forced to retire with just 2 games into their match. And that's all for this edition of DD India NewsHour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can get the latest news and updates on the DD India mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code now on your screen to download it. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran from all of us here in New Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India NewsHour.